Shall we move on to the old guard? If we must.
Oh, yeah, I'd forgotten this was a thing.
Yeah. Curiously enough. Comic book adaptation, The Old Guard, sees a group of 4 mysteriously immortal eternal warriors thrown into disarray when an ex-CIA goon and a big pharma conglomerate team up to hunt them down and extract their secrets, all while they're trying to bring a new member of the Self-Resurrection Society up to speed. That's pretty much as disparaging as I mean it to be. For the purposes of science, I hooked this film up to the Morris Industries schlockometer and it returned a value of 200% schlock, previously thought theoretically impossible or at least medically inadvisable. Thankfully, I kind of love schlock, so it's more bearable than the other Netflix action misfires like Six Underground or Extraction. However, I'm not going to argue that it's anything other than nonsense on toast. Our bunch of excellent immortals, played by Charlize Theron, Matthias Schoenaerts, Marwan Kenzari, and Luca Marinelli, are all underutilised, but do what's asked of them well enough. I quite like the relationship between Kenzari and Marinelli, which is refreshingly non-Marvel-y, and Kiki Lane, as the newcomer, does what's asked of her well enough in the sort of thankless exposition question-asker role that's completely hobbling her. Likewise, the material's generic enough that it's not going to go on Chiwetel Ejiofor's showreel, but then again, he's rather overqualified for this role. The only fish out of water here is Harry Melling as the snivelling CEO type, with a performance that would probably be bettered by an actual fish out of water. The action sequences are, I'll go as far to say, acceptable, maybe? At least the ridiculous stuff here is supposed to be ridiculous, unlike the aforementioned Netflix clunkers, and the central conceit is interesting enough that I can imagine these characters doing something a bit more engaging in a sequel that's not lumbered with this amount of backstory and lore to clunkily exposition their way through. Any such sequel could do with having a bit more cash thrown at the production budget, though. I was surprised to see this pegged at $70 million, and I can only assume that 6/7 of that has gone into the actors' paychecks, as it resolutely does not appear to be reflected on the screen, unless those CGI limbs unbreaking themselves have really gone up in cost since Blade did it years ago. This is very much a thing you can watch if you want to. It's an undemanding distraction in a time when we very much need it, but in normal circumstances, ignoring this would be a much better option. Still, this might well be the only release this year that feels vaguely similar to the tentpoles that would normally be cluttering up our multiplexes at this time of the year, so there's perhaps some small psychological comfort to take from this otherwise mediocre, yet somehow still Netflix's best action film attention candidate.
Yeah, well, my Extraction set a pretty low bar, Scott.
Yes.
Yeah, comparing this favourably to Extraction, which I've seen a number of people do, is, it's not much. I could probably compare my botched appendix operation a number of years ago favourably to Extraction. Again, a lot has been made of this, and I feel like this film is being granted a good deal of goodwill from people because, and shamefully, I cannot remember the director's name.
Gina Prince Bythewood.
Right, okay, so Gina Prince Bythewood. A big deal has been made about this because Charlize Theron is very much, to her credit, interested in using her production chops and her leverage to further the cause of female directors in sort of what I suppose you could consider non-traditionally female genres. A great deal of goodwill seems to be being extended to this film, and I'm not entirely sure it's deserving of it. And it's disappointing because now is absolutely the time for female directors to be getting their punches in with this kind of thing. And I would have loved for this film to have soared like an eagle. However, I did not find it to do that. Very much like Greyhound, I found a lot of it perfunctory. I found there to be elements of character where I felt like I was being told to care about people just because, without any demonstration of why I should. There's a point at which there is a speech given in this film by one of the characters, and again, I can't remember the characters' names now, but the two characters who are in a partnership together, and one of them gives a grandstanding speech about how the other person to whom they're referring is someone who, after millennia of living together as immortal, still thrills him just by kissing him, which would be an amazing speech in any other circumstance where it had been earned as a piece of grandstanding. However, it just felt like the minute that line had been delivered, tumbleweed sort of rolled past for me because I'm not sure it works in the context it's in, and I really want to see the movie where that speech is a punch in the air moment.
Yeah. Also, just sorry, Craig, just before you go on, just in regard to that moment in particular too, it's then used like a moment later for a comedy beat that absolutely does not land.
Yes,
Of all
absolutely.
the guards around them looking at each other, going, "Ugh, look at these horrible gay people." Ugh,
Yeah, exactly.
basically. And it's like it just is so
Ooh,
discordant.
what's going on here? Oh, sorry, you fumbled it. Yeah, it just felt really out of place, and that's a scene I want to see in an action movie. That's a film I want to see in a traditional action movie, because I'd love to see the response from certain people watching that who'd been lulled into a rollicking good action time at the cinema. However, the action in inverted commas of this film is as anodyne as I found it to be in Extraction, and I am so past this John Wick nonsense of the highly choreographed, super quick gunfights where our protagonists are so precise in their actions and everything moves like a ballet. It is alien to me. I cannot have any emotional involvement in that kind of nonsense whatsoever. Nothing bores me more than that kind of an action scene, and I don't even get the thing with John Wick. Let alone this sort of John Wick light, which this film is trying to be. The central conceit interests me. The execution does not. And I went into The Old Guard really looking forward to a rollicking 2 hours of
nonsense.
Absolute sort of graphic novel adaptation nonsense and hyper violence. And again, I came out of it thinking, oh, geez, come on. So yes, really disappointed in this.
Yeah, it was passably enjoyable. I didn't like hate it or anything, but I can't even remember most of the action scenes right now.
It's just soulless. The action is soulless.
The whole film is, I think maybe that's partly the budget too, because everything just felt like it was happening in clinical empty offices and stuff.
Yeah.
It felt corridor of the movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
It felt like, and I know this seems like a funny, sorry Drew, I know this seems like a stupid thing to say given the production values that are the hallmark of TV currently, but this feels like it could have been a TV production from maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, so late 90s even maybe.
Yeah,
just, maybe that's doing a wee bit of a disservice, but yeah, it doesn't feel of the now.
No, it doesn't feel like a big budget movie.
In terms of, contemporary production standards. And I just had like issues with the plot as well. It was like, especially the sort of the great mystery at the centre. It's like, it's quite incredibly predictable. Mm-hmm. And basically it's like, well, I've seen The Matrix. It's basically that plot done less well with Joey Pants. Mm-hmm. And it's, sorry to spoil it for anyone, but, The Matrix is better, just watch that. It's just, I don't know, I didn't resent my time with it. It was passably entertaining, but it wasn't special. And I hadn't even heard of this film until about 3 days ago or something when we were discussing films to do for this. Then at the same time, I saw a news story that said that Charlize Theron's looking at, like, you're talking about a sequel for the surprising hit, The Old Guard. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, okay. It's like, oh, no, okay. I think just everybody's just starved for content at the moment.
Yeah, Netflix released a list of their top 10. I think it must be limited to their original releases, which this is one of them. And of those, there's only one that I thought was okay, which was Platform, and the rest of them like this are just sort of absolute mediocre. So quite what Netflix is, how they're getting so many people to watch this sort of stuff, other than just immediately putting it front and centre of everyone's eyeballs when they log into Netflix, is beyond me. But that...
Because wasn't it something like Extraction and Triple Frontier on that list as well? Bird Box,
Six Underground, a few other odds and ends. Like I think at least
The Irishman's in there.
The Irishman's up there. I think one of the Andy Sandberg and
Adam Sandler.
Adam Sandler, yeah, one of his ones.
I appreciate it's difficult to G oneself up to even mention his name.
Yeah, but yeah, they're just not great. The Platform, which I think will maybe swing round too, because it was at least somewhat interesting, and the only foreign language one there, which is interesting enough, and easily the best of the lot. But yeah, Netflix's quality control for their own stuff is not great, and maybe arguably it's getting a bit better, and The Old Guard's not laughably bad. But yeah, for someone who's basically going to be a studio, they're still got a much better hit rate with their episodic content than their films.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I didn't want you to pass over the episodic content, because in terms of series produced, Netflix is punching way up there, and certainly with the high profile ones, their hit rate has been, like I would suggest, remarkable.
Yeah.
Why they can't translate that over to movie content, I don't know, because when you look at the budgets they're throwing at some of these things, it's quite remarkable. And I know some of them are acquisitions rather than original sort of Netflix productions and stuff, but still, if you look at stuff like Triple Frontier, and what was it they spent on that again? Wasn't it something obscene, like $200 million or something?
Sounds about right.
That sounds right, yeah.
180, $200 million or something like that. And then stuff like...
money, anyway.
Yeah,
Threw
stuff like
tons
this.
of money at Bright, which was bad.
And what was the Cloverfield paradox as well?
Precisely, what was it? Yes.
Yes, exactly. It's quite remarkable, really, to look at some of this stuff and think, how can there be such a huge disparity between the content of your original series production and also your original movie productions? Quite baffling, because honestly, of that stuff, I think on that top 10 list, there was only really The Irishman sticks out to me as being anything which was really sort of laudable and worthwhile. Everything else, I think, of the stuff that I saw, I would think to myself, wow. And of the stuff that I haven't seen specifically but know of by reputation and from people such as yourselves whose opinions I trust, I wouldn't have any of it down in the top 10 whatsoever. Yeah. So one can only assume that Netflix are, when we hear about them investing in billions for original content, I'm going to suggest that a certain percentage of that has been set aside for subliminal advertising or...
What is on the list then? Do you have it at hand?
I don't have it to hand, no.
All you need to know is that it's Bird Box, Extraction, The Irishman, Six Underground, Now This, and... was the platform one of them, did you say, Scott?
It was, yes. I can only assume that it is... Sorry, I'm just vamping here, I'll bring it up. I can only assume that they're paying a lot more attention to their episodic content because, well, it lasts longer and brings more people in. So I suppose they've got their heads on straight.
The thing is, you're like, oh yeah, I get why they want to focus on that. If I'm spending $200 million on something, it doesn't really matter what it is. Mm-hmm. I would still want some sort of... I would still want some level of quality control. Although I keep going to Triple Frontier as an example, but actually I can see what the merits of that exercise were, and there are things about that I still find interesting now, even though it kind of passed me by.
The thing is that Netflix's metrics, however they measure stuff, is clearly not in the way that old ways of doing it, like box office returns or anything. So I don't quite know what they go with. Is it simply engagement? Is it something that they can see a spike in subscriptions because of something being released or something? But their metrics are very different from
I found a list here, and what they're saying is the audience in the first 4 weeks of the film's debut.
Yes, that sounds familiar.
Right. So at the bottom of it, you've got The Perfect Day at 55 million. The Platform at 56, we good to see. The Wrong Missy at 59, which was...
Oh, God.
The what?
I watched the Half the Bag episode about The Wrong Missy, and it looks like it may be the worst film ever made.
Yeah,
The Wrong what?
It's an Adam Sandler production. He's not in it, but it does star David Spade, so...
Yeah.
The Wrong Missy?
Yeah, the character's called Missy.
I haven't even heard of it.
You don't want to. It looks like one of the worst things that has ever been committed to film. Or, well, hard drives, I guess, but it just looks so bad.
Triple Frontiers at 7 with 63 million. Slightly disappointingly, The Irishman's got 64 million at number 6. I was hoping that would be much better.
You were hoping that would be number 1?
Yes, particularly when above it you've got Murder Mystery at 83 million, Six Underground also 83 million, Spencer Confidential at 85.
Oh, yeah.
Bird Box at 89 and Extraction at 99 million.
What was
Spencer Confidential?
A Mark Wahlberg action comedy thing, isn't it?
Don't know that one.
No, I've not watched it. I've certainly heard enough about it. There was one there somewhere around the middle, Scott, that you mentioned that I wasn't even familiar with either. Murder Mystery or something?
That's Jennifer Aniston, Adam Sandler.
Oh, Christ almighty.
Yes.
Talk about a meeting of two minds.
It's not as awful as many of the other films on that list, I assure you.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, Netflix, get your act together.
Yeah.
That's what we're saying.
What is it with movies, Netflix?
What's the deal with that?
Do you know what surprises me is that Roma's not on there.
It disappoints me. I'm not sure it necessarily surprises me.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me. If it was to do with merit, you'd have Roma, then The Irishman right at the top of the list. It's nothing to do with quality.
Yeah.